The FA Cup was recently on, and while a lot of people were focusing on Haaland nearly getting a double hat-trick, and De Bruyne nearly getting a double hat-trick of assists, my focus was on the Newcastle-Blackburn game, as I saw Trippier going into midfield. Another one's joined the list of inverted fullbacks. So I've decided to make a video on why it happens and the history of inverted fullbacks. And almost all the managers that use inverted fullbacks do it because of positional play. So if you haven't watched that video, then, well, watch it. Positional play is all about having the ball, having possession and passing your way through. But it's difficult to pass through the centre when you've got 3 players in the centre and they've also got 3 players in the centre. So what you can do is invert a fullback to create a box midfield, which literally everyone uses. Arteta, Pep, Klopp, everyone. So that's the first reason. You invert a fullback and you have an overload in the centre. But what if the winger just follows? Well, that brings us on to the second reason. Have you noticed that a lot of teams play with dribbly wingers? Look at Manchester City, they've signed Udogie. But the best example is Arsenal, with Martinelli and Saka, that can take on their fullback. So when a fullback inverts, and the winger follows, there's a clear passing lane to your dribbling winger, who's one-on-one with his fullback. This requires Arsenal's players to receive a lot of progressive passes. And if you look at the player in Europe's top 5 leagues, with the most progressive passes received this season, it's Saka. And second place, Martinelli. So that's the second reason. There's a clear passing lane to the winger, and teams have been exploiting this passing lane by having more dribbly wingers that can receive progressive passes. But that's in build-up. What about further up the pitch? Well, we know further up the pitch, teams like to use a 3-2-2-3 or a 2-3-2-3. So, if you want to use this shape, then why didn't you just push your fullbacks up, invert your wingers, and keep your midfielders defensive? Well, that's exactly what Klopp did back in 2020. But there's a problem with this. Look at this right wide space. Let's say it's occupied by a fullback, a flying fullback, which is what Klopp used to do. It's a defender. It specializes in defending. It spent its whole career learning how to defend. So it should be in a defensive position. Look at this winger. It should be in the wide space. It specializes in dribbling. That's what it's been doing since youth level. So it should be in the wide space. Even though fullbacks might have attacking qualities, they're still defenders, so they're naturally best in a defensive position. And what's a better defensive position? This right wide space or this midfield space? Well, obviously the midfield space. So that's the third reason why teams invert fullbacks. They're defenders, so to create the 3-2-5, they should be in a defensive position. Now, the trend of inverted fullbacks started with arguably the most innovative manager in the world, Pep Guardiola. But it wasn't actually at Manchester City. And it wasn't at Barcelona either. He started it at Bayern Munich. He had a 4-1-4-1. And he wanted his midfielders, Müller and Thiago, to get further up the pitch into the half spaces. But naturally, this would leave Xabi Alonso very exposed. And remember, it's the Bundesliga. And Bundesliga teams love to counterattack quickly and exploit space. But luckily, there was a quick fix. Pep Guardiola's fullbacks Alaba and Lam were some of the best in the world at keeping the ball. Especially Alaba, who was one of the best versatile players in the world and could play in midfield. In fact, he did that quite frequently for his country. So, of course, Pep Guardiola inverted his fullbacks into the midfield. And since then, it seems like everyone's been doing the same. Like I mentioned earlier, it meant they could progress centrally. It meant if the winger followed, there was a free passing lane to their dribbly winners like Ian Robin and Frank Ribery, who could beat their opponent. And of course, it meant they were defensively secure for the counter-attacking Bundesliga teams that they were playing. Pep then went to City and bought some new fullbacks and then replaced them with some more fullbacks and then replaced them with some more fullbacks, and he ended up with Zinchenko and Walker. And Zinchenko is an inverted fullback. Walker, not so much, but that's why there's a 3-2 structure. Zinchenko inverts while Walker becomes a third centre-back. Skip ahead to 2023 and a lot of managers would use an inverted fullbacks, but something really significant happened. Something that signified the takeover of Pep Guardiola's style of play. And it was Jurgen Klopp, who had a unique style that was nothing to do with inverted fullbacks, heavy metal football, high energy, flying fullbacks. He decided to invert Trent Alexander-Arnold. And that was a surprise. It took a while for him to get used to his new role, and he got better on the ball and slowly improved. But there is one thing that sets him apart from other inverted fullbacks, and it's his amazing playmaking ability from deep. He is Liverpool's deep-lying playmaker. But the thing is, inverted fullbacks aren't just going to be a 2020s thing. Youth players who are fullbacks are probably learning right now how to be more press-resistant and more like a midfielder. Just think, there's not going to be another David De Gea. There's not going to be a goalkeeper that isn't really good enough with his feet to play for a top team. Those players are becoming extinct. And I think the same's going to happen with fullbacks that aren't good enough to play in midfield, or just aren't good enough with their feet full stop. We're going to see a huge surge in fullbacks that are able to play with their feet, that are able to play in midfield. And maybe 10 years from now, there'll be barely any players that can't do it. Which means more flexibility, more options tactically. And it could make the future of football tactics very interesting.